All right, today we are going to try some magical elevation using photography and Photoshop. I'll show you how I take the shot and how I process it in Photoshop as well. So a couple things you will need for this project. You will need a tripod, and I've got my camera set up on a tripod. You will need some sort of stool or bench or object to have your model sit or stand on. Allows them to elevate off the ground. And so it's kind of straightforward. You're going to have your model pose on the object that you have in front of the camera. What you want to do though is lock in all of your settings. You want to lock in your focus, your f-stop, your shutter speed, lock it all in. After you take a picture of your model on the object, elevating on it, then just remove the object from the scene and take another picture using the same exact settings. All right, I want you to pose as if you are falling from the sky and you are about to hit the ground. Make it look dramatic. Oh, that's so good. Perfect. Oh, I love it. Getting tired? Yeah. All right, that's good. Take number 2. And don't bend your back as much. Oh, good. I love it. Left arm up. All right, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So one thing I am going to try to do is to add some knives to the image to make it look as if my poor daughter is about to fall on some knives. Not sure if this is going to work. It will require some good Photoshop skills by me. I'm not that good at Photoshop, so we'll see. But I'll show you how I do it if it works. Okay, so I've got a picture of my daughter on that cube. I've got a picture of the backdrop without the cube. Now I've got to go into Photoshop and put this all together. So let's get it to my computer and we'll give it a try. Okay, here we are in Lightroom. I downloaded the images and I've chosen 3 that I want to work with. I've got my daughter Annie lying on this orange cube. I've got then just a plain black background. And again, the lighting is the same, the shutter speed, the f-stop, the focus, the focal length, it's all exactly the same, and that's important. And then lastly, I am going to try to work in these knives into the image. Now, I did make a couple of mistakes when I was doing this, but I can fix them in Photoshop. In fact, it will give me a chance to show you some other skills in Photoshop that I normally wouldn't be showing you for this kind of project. But let's move these into Photoshop. I'm going to highlight all 3. They are highlighted. I'll hit Photo, Edit In. I want them on the same image, the same platform. I want different layers, so open as layers in Photoshop. When you do that, Photoshop doesn't always put them in the order you want them. And in fact, the bottom layer here, which is the knives, I want that to be on top. So I can click on this layer and simply drag up and put that on top. I'm going to hide this layer for a second. I could just click on this dot next to the layer right here. And so I'm going to work with these 2 layers. The first one is Annie on the cube, and the next one is the background. And this is really simple. What we need to do is get rid of the cube. If we do that, that black background will show through. And again, if the lighting is the same and the focal length is the same, it will look very seamless. And so let's put a mask on this middle layer. Since the mask is white, this layer is obviously visible. But if we paint in black, and I'll use a brush tool, make sure my foreground color is black. If I paint on black, that bottom layer is going to show through. And since it's essentially identical, you won't notice much of a difference. It will be very seamless. And so, relatively straightforward process. Obviously, as you get closer to your model, you want to be a little bit more precise. And so I'm going to zoom in by hitting Command+, and I'm going to make a smaller brush by hitting the left bracket key. And just make sure you're careful not to delete any of your model. I'm being pretty careful here. And by the way, if you do, it's not a big deal. If I went up like that, oops, I got rid of Annie, I can shift back to a white brush by hitting this small icon and paint back in. Relatively straightforward. Let's go back to black. I think that was an AC/DC album. And get rid of this orange. Now, some of the cube is going over Annie's shirt. Now, to be really precise, I should probably clone some of Annie's shirt and just work it down. You clone parts of this and move it over here, but I'm not going to be that precise. I don't want this video to last too long, and so I'm going to make just a smaller brush and simply get rid of this orange. And you'll see when it's normal size, you're not going to notice it too much. Let me go back to the regular size, and so there we have it. We've gotten rid of that orange cube. Now there's one problem, and that is you see some of the orange highlights in her shirt. You see it here, here, even in her pants there's a bit of an orange tone because it's reflecting from the cube. I'm going to deal with that later. But this is it. I mean, this is basically, I was able to create an elevation of Annie kind of levitating off the ground. However, it would be pretty cool if we could get these knives in there too. Now, I made a mistake. I shot the knives later and I had moved the cube. And so, you see, these knives are over too far to the right. So first thing I want to do is click on this layer. I'm going to move it. So let me just select most of the cube. Doesn't have to be the whole thing, but certainly select those knives. I'm going to select the move tool up on top and just move it over a little bit. And you see now behind there, you do see Annie's foot, but we'll deal with that. So I think I want the position of the knives to be roughly about there. Let me go back to my brush tool. I'm going to deselect that by hitting Command D. So now we want to get rid of all the orange and bring back Annie. So let's first bring back Annie. Let's go here to the top layer. Let's put a mask on there. Again, the mask is white, so this whole layer is visible. But if we paint in black, I'm going to make that brush a little bit bigger. Annie will magically appear back in the image. And again, since the lighting was the same and focal length, you're not going to notice a big difference. So we're back to where we were. We've got the knives positioned well. The only problem is I've got this orange cube showing. And I do want to get rid of the orange cube and just have the knives. So what I'm going to do is use a selection tool that works pretty well. And that's called I'm going to click on the image itself, the color range selection tool. And what I can do with this is simply click on the colors that I want to select, and that's orange. And you can see on the mask on the right, it's largely picking up most of the orange. If you add this dropper with the plus sign, you can add other tones of orange, and it will pick up most of it. So if I click around, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And even in the shadows, you want to click. Now, if you look on the mask on the right, it's picking up some of Annie as well. That's easy to fix later, but I want to make sure I get all of this cube. So when I delete it, you'll just see the knives. And if you look at that mask here, it looks like it's picking up most of the orange in the cube. Let's scroll back out again. So I hit OK, and you can see my selection. What I want to do is make that disappear. So if I can just change that to black, then the layer beneath it will show, which the lowest layer is going to be just that black background. How do I do that? First, click on the mask, Edit, Fill, and I'm going to fill with black, contents black. And you see it does a pretty good job. Now, you could still see some orange up there. So again, I could just paint with black and get rid of that. And anything else that they went away, I could just, if it highlighted parts of Annie, I can get rid of it. Her feet. So if I zoom in on the knives, I'm just going to hit Command+, you could see I did a pretty good job with it. there's, you can see right here I messed it up, so I can just paint with black, make it disappear. Looks pretty good, actually. The only one little thing is, in the knife itself, there was some orange, those labels down below. So if I switch back to white, make a much smaller brush, I can paint that back in, and that looks pretty good. There's a bit of an orange glow around it, but again, I'm going to solve that the way I solved the orange on Annie's sweater. Make it bigger again. Now, one last issue. On the left side, I blew it, and I have part of the wall back there showing up. This is a pretty easy fix. What I can do is to use a clone stamp tool to clone this part of the image out. What I want to do first is flatten the image. I want one image. So I'm choosing all layers. I'm going to hit flatten image. I right-clicked and hit flatten image. So I'm now in one image. I'm going to select my clone stamp tool. And I'm going to sample by hitting the Alt option, part of the backdrop, and simply drag down. I can sample some of this and drag down. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I have to be a little careful around her hand. But if I sample and drag down, whoops, I got some of her there. I'm just sampling part of the image and then dragging over it. Relatively straightforward. Make a smaller brush. I can hit the left bracket key, sample, and work around her hand. I'm not going to go too crazy here, but you just get a sense of what I'm doing. I'm going to sample some of this, come down here. All I'm doing is hitting that Alt key to sample it. Get rid of some of this hair. Pretty good. Let's get a little bit tighter in here. Make a smaller brush. Sample some of this. And around her hand. Not perfect, but pretty good. One last bit here. Okay. Now, to get rid of that orange glow, I'm just going to cheat. I'm just going to make this a black and white image. Bam, done. Probably add a little contrast. I can use a curves adjustment layer. I can pull down on the shadows, pull up on the highlights for a bit more contrast. And there we go, Annie elevating over knives. I hope you found this video interesting and helpful and useful. If you do have any questions, comments, please put them in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more of these videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Take care, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy.